to hear? We are audible.
So we can start, sir.
All right. Uh, Good evening, all. We have today Sneha Priya for our guest lecture. She'll be talking on the LLM opportunities abroad, and she'll be sharing with us her experiences and the requirements, do's and don'ts about the application processes. May I introduce her to you? She has completed her Bachelor of Civil Laws from University of Oxford. She is our alumna, and she has bagged lot many awards. Some of you I will mention. She was amongst the top 10 law students which were nominated by Indian National Bar Associations. She received the scholarship New Passage of India Scholarship Exchange Award under DAD. She was also topper of batch 2013-18. She has also received a couple of scholarships, fellowships from the JN, then Eric Lewis Internship Funds, GS College Law Fellowship, JN Tata Scholarship, Mahindra Scholarships, and so on. Her work experience dates back from 2013. Currently, she is working as a legal intern with Redress London. Sneha, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you. Over to you. We'll be welcome you at Symbol School, Pune. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm assuming I know most of you. I'm seeing your names. So I've had this conversation with almost all of you, but I'm just going to lay down certain standards and procedure in terms of how you should go about applying for your master's abroad. What are the requirements? What are the things that you're supposed to be doing, not doing? Essentially, I felt that this was important because I faced a lot of problems when I had applied for my master's, because there are a lot of things that we would ideally not know because we haven't really experienced this. So essentially, I want to put down all those things for you to make it easier, to make the process easier for you, and I hope this session helps. I'll make it very simple and precise, and I'm going to take all of you through certain pointers. Essentially, these are the most important pointers, that all of you should keep in mind while you're looking for opportunities abroad. When you're applying for your master's degree. So the first thing that people usually ask me, and I think is a question that's probably running in all of your minds, as well as when exactly is the right time to pursue a postgraduate degree. And I think it's a very valid question, of course, because you don't know whether you want to pursue it right after you finish your undergraduate degree, or you want to pursue it after a certain amount of work experience. So I think there's no right answer to this question, specifically because it's a very subjective experience, and I have both pros and cons for both ideologies, where either people wanting to do it right after their undergraduate degree, or people wanting to do it after a certain amount of work experience. Now, the certain advantages that exist with working for a while and then going for a master's degree, one is that you get a lot of practical experience. Now, what happens is when we are studying in law school, we're only restricted to a very theoretical aspect, and you only learn, it's very limited to your books in terms of learning concepts. But I think when you work, you actually understand the practical application, and you understand how it really works in the real world. And we all must have realized that during our internships, that the studying a specific subject is not the same thing as is not the same thing when we intern, because the way we use those concepts is way more different. So the one advantage of going for a master's degree after work experience is that it gives you that certain amount of time to understand whether you really want to pursue a master's in that specific subject. Because it so happens that during your law school, you may like a subject, but it may not necessarily be the subject that you would like after a certain point of time. So I think it gives you that space to understand. It gives you that mindset that this is what you really want to do. And the other thing that it probably helps is also in saving up finances, something that will not happen if you go immediately. So, you can work for a year or 2 or 3 years, and then you end up saving some amount of money that could actually help you in your finances, because all of us know that finances play a huge role when you're pursuing a master's degree, of course. And of course, the other thing that, it also helps is that it gives you I think you also understand through the process if you want to pursue that subject, or if you want to actually go for another subject, because again, like I said, it may not be your niche, or it may not be the subject that you actually want to pursue. Now, while saying all these things about going for master's degree after work experience, I would say that if you want to pursue it after an undergraduate degree, also it isn't wrong, because again, that school of thought believes in a different aspect, something that I did. Now, there is a certain belief that, okay, you finished your 5 years or your 3 years of law course, and you're in that zone where you want to continue to study. And these are the kind of people who ideally want to pursue a master's degree right after finishing the undergraduate degree. Someone like me, because I went right after I finished my 5-year degree, is that you're in that zone where you want to learn, and you want to imbibe as much as you can once for all, and then set out to either maybe do a PhD, or set out to either start working once and for all. So I think there's nothing wrong in this school of thought as well. I think it just depends on your approach. But of course, when you want to do this, you have to be doubly sure of what you want to pursue, and if this is the subject that you're finally intending to go about with. And also, the other thing is that a lot of times that I also noticed with my seniors is that people who wanted to pursue masters at a later point of time, eventually ended up giving it. They gave it up only because you're kind of used to the process of working, where you're earning some amount, and then your life is it's stuck to a certain routine, and it becomes very difficult to go away from this and again start studying. So a lot of my friends and my seniors who really wanted to pursue a master's degree didn't do it, because they were not in that phase where they could go back to studying. So, like I said, there are pros and cons in both these schools of thought, and I think there is nothing wrong. But of course, there are certain things that you have to keep in mind while you're applying for a master's degree at any point of time. And of course, the certain pointers are the kind of courses that you should choose. One, two is the kind of law schools that you should choose, and of course the country, because you want to be exposed to a diverse culture, you want to be exposed to people from various jurisdictions. And then of course the most important aspect, or according to me, is the finances, because you can't impose a financial burden on anyone. So you want to ensure that you're going to be going with the best scholarships, or with sufficient amount of financial aid, so as to not impose a financial burden. And of course, fourth is again very important, is the opportunities that you're trying to seek after you finish your degree. So essentially how the degree can empower you in terms of you doing well for yourself, and how you can use the degree to your benefit. Now, having covered that aspect, I just want to go to the next part of my discussion, which is essentially narrowing down the courses in the law schools. Now, when I had to do this, of course, the way I would do it, and the way I would suggest everyone to do, is to have a healthy balance between the law school and the course that you want to do. Now, what I essentially mean by this is that it's very important to choose a law school that is good, and also the law school that is good with the course that you want to do. So, while saying that, let me also warn you and caution you that it's important to not rely on rankings like the QS rankings or the Times rankings, because these rankings don't essentially give out everything about the university. And a lot of times we get tricked into it, because a university may not be known for a specific course, but it may not be known for a specific course, but maybe good generally. But when you're doing a master's degree, you have to be doubly sure if they're also good with the course. A simple example is, when you're looking at universities like Leiden, which is in Netherlands, again, excellent university known for its international criminal law courses. You have universities in Geneva. You have the Geneva Institute, which is again a very, very, very good institute for international law. So a lot of people don't know these universities, because you're just trying to rely on the most common ones that we know. But these universities are very, very well known for their specializations. And in fact, the Geneva Institute has most of the people who work for the UN are from, and most of the diplomats, in fact, are from the Geneva Institute. So, essentially the underlying reason is that there has to be a very broad-based research that one has to undertake before pursuing a master's degree. And this research should not be restricted to certain jurisdictions. Don't restrict yourself to only the US and the UK, because these are, the so-called most popular countries. But I think you should broaden your horizon into looking at other countries as well, because I think the opportunities are large, and, the kind of exposure is great. Again, taking you back to the example of, say, something like the Leiden University, when you're doing an international criminal law course there, makes it all the more, it makes all the difference, because You're also having the ICC there, you're having the ICG there. So you all these things play a huge role, because when you're going to be having a practical exposure, and when you can actually implement all your concepts into reality, and I think that gives you a holistic development when you want to do a master's course. And essentially, this is how I went about it. You have to choose a course, and then you essentially look into colleges that are probably known for the course, look into the professors who are teaching these courses, either through, you have a lot of them who've written a lot, a lot of them who've published a lot of articles. And I think that gives you a sense of what the university expects you and what you can expect from the university. So, the reason why this research has to be quite comprehensive is because, you're doing a master's degree. So it is essentially going to be a 10-month-old to a 12-month course. So, you have to make the most of the time that you're going to be spending. So when you're going to be doing this, you're going to be investing massive amount of money. You have to ensure that the result and, what you expect from the course is also going to be something that you're going to be satisfied with. So this is something that I would definitely recommend, that, please research well on all your courses and research well on all the law schools, and please don't follow the rankings, because we all know the rankings don't really matter, because they don't really focus on every aspect that we are looking for. And subsequently, something that is the most important part of the application process is the statement of purpose. Now, essentially, we all know what the statement of purpose is. It's your story to the admissions committee to determine why you deserve to be, admitted to that university and why you deserve to be taken in. Now, this is a very important component, specifically because, this is the only way they know about you. I mean, they will know about you through your grades, they will know about you through your recommendation letters, but this is your story. So it has to be the best thing that you put across. It has to be your best, it has to be the best version of you, because it reflects your personality, to be honest. So the most important thing in the statement of purpose is that, you need to know what the admissions committee expects from you. And this is very important because, you have to know what they're looking for. So one mistake that I found in a lot of personal statements that I saw was that people would simply reproduce, whatever's there in their CV in the SOP. And that's simply, it doesn't make sense, because if you're just going to put in, your achievements, if you're going to just list out things in your SOP, then that is not what the admissions committee wants. What they want is essentially a story with a personal touch, which includes everything from your academic achievements, your extracurricular achievements, your co-curricular achievements, your work experience, anything with respect to leadership opportunities that you may have taken. And most importantly, your interest, why do you want to do the course? For what, what do you want to do after you join? And where do you see yourself eventually? So there's certain pointers that I made one of certain pointers, and I can actually share this with all of you after we finish this conversation as well, is that what is essentially, the certain things that the admissions committee will look into when they're, probably looking at someone's statement of purpose. One is, of course, the background of the applicant. And when I mean background, I don't mean your personal background. I mean your professional background, in terms of what are your subjects of interest, where have you pursued your undergraduate degree, and why are you interested in those subjects? Essentially to give, an introduction about the person. And then, of course, why, it's important to select you and not anyone else. Now, I think this is the most important aspect, because you need to stand out. There has to be a difference between you and any other person who's applied. And when I mean this, I don't mean that you have to compare yourself with anyone else, but I simply mean that you have to stand out from other applicants. And the only way to stand out is to, portray and is to probably put across the best achievements that you have. So, you might have like 10 paper presentations, you might have 10 moods, or, 10 good things that you've done. But essentially, you don't have to put in all 10 to prove that you stand out. If you put in 2, but also portray it in the best possible way, I think you can weave into a beautiful narrative for any admissions committee to be impressed with your application. And of course, the most important aspect is the motivation behind your application. Why do you want to apply? Why do you want to pursue a master's degree from, say, X university? And what do you expect from the university? Okay. And a simple example here would be, say I want to, I'm applying to LSE. And if my personal statement is going to have is going to have something to the tune of, me wanting to work with, say, X professor from there, I am trying to create a connect, because it means that I have researched. So, when I'm the admissions committee and I see someone who's making a reference to a professor in the university, I'm actually understanding that, okay, this person has done his research. It is not a generic personal statement. It is a very specific statement where this person is referring to a professor in LSE and wants to work with that professor. So this person is actually researched on the course and the professor. So, there has to be some sort of personal touch and a link between your, with whatever you write in the SOP, and of course, it has to, there has to be between what you write and between the university that you want to join, because only then they will be convinced. And one more advice that I've a lot of people ask me these questions about approaching agencies to get your SOPs reviewed or to have them write, or any sort of assistance. I would strictly recommend against this, because I think this process is not the most ethical process, one. And second is, to be very honest, admission committees have right now they've already figured out a way where they can see if someone has actually done this originally, or if this is an agency. Because to be very honest, agencies have they follow this sort of format which has become very you can easily recognize whether it is an original copy or whether it's whether it is from an agency. So I would really suggest that there is nothing to panic, and that any person can do this. You don't have to worry that you have to only go to professional people to have to help you or assist you in the SOPs, because I never had anyone who did that for me. But the point is that you have to ensure that it is as original as possible, and that you're putting out your best self. You're putting out your personality in the truest sense in your SOP. And of course, to put it simply out there, I would say there are 4 stages in writing the SOP. The first stage, according to me, as what I've written, is of course starting early. Now, this is something that most of us don't do, even if we're told 1,000 times. We don't really start early. All of us love doing things last minute. But when it comes to applying for a master's degree abroad, I would strictly suggest that each one of you start at least 8 months early. And when I mean 8 months, you will understand why 8 months at a further point of time. But for starters, I think the process of an SOP will easily take you 6 months if you're going to be putting your 100% into it. And when I mean putting your 100% into it, I don't mean that you sit every day of those 6 months, but simply the fact that when you finish your first copy, you are bound to send it for people. You are bound to send it to people to review and suggest, and that is only possible if you have that sufficient time that is there for it. So when you start early, it's you understand that you can your sort of nuances are much more different from when you do it last minute. We all know that something which is done last minute is never the best version of what we want to produce. And of course, the second stage in this process is nothing but the pre-drafting exercise. Now, why I would say that you need a pre-drafting exercise is that simply because of the fact that we all know that there is a word limit for all the SOPs that we have to submit. And you all will be shocked that there are the word limit extends to, say, a maximum of 1,500 words to as low as even 200 words. And we all know that it's very, very difficult to put out your best version in that word limit, because it's very difficult. We in an ideal scenario, we cannot finish it in that amount of words. So, which is why a pre-drafting exercise is important, because it helps you brainstorm. And when I mean brainstorm, what essentially it does is that you start to think of the best of your lot. So, for example, you try to think about the best opportunities that you've had and that you want to add in your SOP. You think about the best internships that you've had, the best experiences that you've had that you want to add in. You think about the best, say, leadership opportunities that you've taken up and that you want to add in, because we all know that we can't add everything, right? Because there are multiple components. So essentially, you're just putting the best of everything that you've done. And this pre-drafting exercise allows you to it allows you to really work harder, I feel, because you have the broader perspective. So, when what I mean by this is, when you start writing an SOP, go all out. And when I mean go all out, let your word limit exceed 2,000, 3,000 or 4,000 words. It doesn't matter. Because what happens is that in your first stage, when you have a 4,000 word SOP, you can always reduce it. That is not a problem. But the point is, you shouldn't exclude anything that you possibly may have included at an earlier stage. So it so happened with me that when I started off, my first SOP was 5,000 words, because I wanted to put in everything that I thought was useful. But it became easier for me to reduce it after that, because when you reread it, you realize that, okay, this does not make sense. This is not too important. So the reason why this is the best process is that it gives you a broader horizon. You're just not restricting yourself to the word limit. you're giving yourself that opportunity to go all out and then reducing it. I think this is a very easy and a good practice to follow. Also, one very important thing, which is of course coming to the third stage of my of the statement of purpose writing, is of course drafting it. And when you finish this, the most important part is the revise, review, and edit. Now, this is the most important thing in my opinion, is because you have written your your version and your part, and you will always be convinced with it because you have written it. But when you send it for review, you see that there are people who have disagreements, people who think it doesn't make sense, or people who have suggestions. Now, one again caution here is that don't try to send it to too many people, because it doesn't help. There's no point if you're going to be getting 50 suggestions or from 50 different people about things being okay, not okay, because sometimes it just confuses you, because you're not going to be adhering to everyone, right? So what I did was I just sent it to four people who I felt would really help me in this process, and four people who I knew that would definitely give me the most unbiased suggestion / review. The last thing that you would want to do is to get like two opposite reviews of one person saying it's amazing and the other person saying it's trash, because at the end of the day, you don't know what to do in such a scenario. So, please don't believe in the concept that the more number of people you send your SOP, the better it will be, because we all know that it's always quality over quantity. So just ensure that you send it to the people you believe in, the people who will give you an unbiased suggestion. And I think that should be more than enough. And of course, what should be included in the statement of purpose, if I can take you all through certain pointers that I've actually written down. One is, of course, the background of the applicant, like I already mentioned, as to what you have studied, what are the subjects you've studied, what are your areas of interest, and why you want to pursue that subject course. Second is your achievements, maybe your academic achievements, extracurricular, co-curricular achievements, and all of this. Then, of course, the work experience matters a lot. Always makes a huge difference when you talk about the work that you've done. Your motivation behind applying, very important. You can also add in your inspiration, but very thin line of difference between inspiration and motivation. Again, it's very subjective. Then again, why should you be selected and not anyone else? Simply why you stand out amongst all the applicants that would have possibly applied for this course. And again, most important aspect is what is the end result. Now, okay, you finished the master's degree. What do you achieve? Like, what is your end goal? Do you see yourself coming back to your country and working for your country, or do you see yourself working abroad? Do you see yourself, working for the UN? Do you see yourself, doing a further degree, maybe a PhD? You have to be clear in that, because you're doing an advanced degree, and it's very, very important for you to convey what you want to eventually do. Because any university would want to know how they're going to empower the student after he's finished or after she is finished the degree. So it's very important that you have an end result or an end goal that you seek to achieve after having finished the master's degree. And essentially, this could be future short-term goals or long-term goals, but you have to have a goal. And that is one of the pointers where admission committee really, decides between choosing applicants. Because sometimes people just want to, people just write that, okay, I want to do a master's degree, and they don't write anything after that. And I think that does not make sense, because you need to have a goal. There has to be an end result of whatever you're intending to pursue. And coming to the next part is, of course, do's and don'ts of writing a statement of purpose. And I think essentially all of us know what we shouldn't do and what we should do. Very, very simple. But I think one of the things that you definitely shouldn't do is, the usage of flowery, complicated, and extremely, of language that seems fancy but is not necessary. So again, this is a very massive misconception by many that, SOP has to be very fancy language, very flowery language, and, that it has to be out of the world. But I think it's completely not required. The best story or the best SOPs is of someone who can put out the story in the best way possible with the simplest of words. So what the admissions committee is not looking for is, fancy words or flowery, great words. What they're looking for is language that they can simply comprehend, and language that connects. So, you have to ensure that, you're going to be simple, straightforward, and precise. Remember these three things. But at the same time, when I mean, you don't have to use complicated words. At the same time, don't use extremely informal words, or don't get too personal that you're, going away from the professionalism that's required while writing an SOP. So there's a thin balance that you have to maintain. And I think that your language has to be something that should be easily comprehensible. And I think that's one of the biggest requirements when you're writing or when you're drafting the SOP in terms of language. And again, like I said, and I will always say that I think an SOP reflects the true personality of an applicant. So it is the platform for you to put out the best in you. So when I mean that, I simply mean that please don't put your weaknesses there. Please don't mention what you're not good at, because that's not being modest. That's simply not using the word limit to your benefit, because they're just looking out the best. They're looking out for the best in you. They're not looking out for your weaknesses. So if you're being given an opportunity to just put yourself out in those limited number of words, and I think I would always put in the best version of myself. So please ensure that you put in the things that are most required, and do not try to demean yourself or be modest in its real sense, or just put down yourself, because that's not going to help at all. Having finished that, I think the other two components that are probably very important is a transcript and the concept of recommendation letters. Now, I don't know if most of you know, but the process of obtaining a transcript is very different in when it comes to pursuing a master's degree, because it's not a simple process. And this was one of the reasons why I had suggested that we start the process at least 8 months early, because it takes time. Now, I'll give you a simple example for this. Is when you apply for universities abroad, taking simple example of US universities, you have a platform called LSAC, which is a common platform for most universities in the US. And this platform essentially allows you to apply to many universities at once. And they require your transcript. Now, this concept of transcript is different from the mark sheets that you have. It's not the same thing. And this is essentially sent by the SIU. So there is a huge process where you have to send an application to the SIU, and then SIU processes it, and then they send it to LSAC. And we all know that LSAC is in the US. So, you're going to be sending it to another country, which means it is going to take longer. And it's not just that. So once they receive it, they take about 15 to 20 days easily to process it. So you realize this entire process of you applying for it, SIU sending it, it being finally processed takes easily about a month at the minimum. So this is something that I didn't anticipate, to be very honest, because I thought, okay, initially I thought it was just a summation of the mark sheets that we have. And when I realized it was a transcript, it was a little too late, because, I didn't know about it. So I would really suggest that all of you keep this in mind specifically, because this is something that is going to be a very time-consuming process, and of course something that you can't anticipate. You can't anticipate the time it's going to take, because it completely depends. And this is very, very important, because again, if your transcript does not get processed, your application is rejected. So the last thing that all of you would want is a rejection of your application based on an administrative difficulty. That is something. These are things that should be fixed at a bare minimum. So I would definitely suggest that all of you keep this in mind when you're applying for your master's abroad, that please do not take the transcript bit lightly, because a lot of other external problems could occur. For example, when I applied, there was also the Diwali vacation in the middle. So again, these are things that you cannot foresee. You will not be able, because during Diwali, of course, the college doesn't work. So these are things which are not in your hands. So ideally, all the way makes it easier if you're going to be applying earlier. And of course, recommendation letters. The recommendation letters also play a huge role. Now, again, a very, very common question with respect to this that a lot of people ask me is, who should we ideally choose as our references? And I think the most important thing here is that, you have to choose people who are essentially going to help, bring out the best in you in their recommendation letter, and who are essentially connected with the course that you want to pursue. Now, if you want to pursue a course, say company law or say constitutional law, you should definitely go out for people, for professors who are actually, who have taught you these subjects, because, they can attest to your capabilities. And I think that's the best form of proof. Now, when I wanted to do my master's, and essentially I really liked international law, I made it a point to approach my professor who taught me international criminal law and my professor who taught me international relations. So essentially, these are subjects that are connected to international law, and also, it is the best way to put across your interest. And when I say that, I also mean that this applies even to your SOPs. Now, say, for example, when you write that you love corporate law, you also need to ensure that you put in achievements, or you put in proof to say that you're good at it. So the best way that the admissions committee is going to know that you deserve to be taken as a student is if you can show proof that, okay, this person not only likes the subject but also is good at it. Now, if I am good at, say, international law, I have to put in achievements which are connected. So there has to be a connect and a link with every single statement that I put in my SOP. If I like corporate law and I put in my achievements in, say, constitutional law, there is a lack of connect, because when I say I like something, there also has to be proof of why I like it, and essentially why I want to pursue it. Because we are talking about an advanced degree as opposed to an undergraduate degree. So I think this is something that all of you have to keep in mind, and this is something that is going to be massively helpful, because when you write that you like constitutional law, and you then put in a few achievements where you've written about issues of constitutional law, you've written about your internships, where you've worked in issues with respect to it, or say you worked in moots where you've worked in issues pertaining to constitutional law. I think it gives a massive boost to your statement of purpose, because it convinces the admissions committee to believe that you deserve to probably be taken as a student to the university. And so these are two more aspects that are very important for an application process. And of course, the most important aspect, according to me, and I think which is also important to all of you, is the availability of scholarships and financial aid. Now, I think this is something that is extremely important, because we all know how expensive it is to study abroad, and I'm assuming all of us don't want to impose a financial burden on anyone when it comes to sponsoring our education. So one is that a lot of the universities that you apply abroad provide massive opportunities when it comes to scholarships. I think that's a big plus. So that's always there. But I would always suggest, and try to, I would convey, and I would try to tell all of you to go one step further, to not only look for opportunities there, but to also look for opportunities in India as well. Samiksha, I will answer your question. And that's a great question. I'm definitely going to answer that. I'll just finish this and answer your question. So one of the most important things that even I missed out is that there are a lot of scholarship opportunities that are available in India, and they are massive. They a lot of them sponsor half of your education, a lot of them sponsor part of your education, and anything is good. A few examples of these are the JN Tata scholarship, the KC Mahindra scholarship. You have the INLAC scholarship. So what I'm trying to say is, don't restrict yourself to only college associated scholarships. Go all out. There are a lot of opportunities in India, and try to seek all of these scholarships. And when I mean that you seek, you have to ensure that you're also you also are checking up on these deadlines. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I made a mistake. Now, I got my admit from Oxford on March 15th, and I was of this perception that you apply for a scholarship only after you get an admission. But turns out that's not the case, because a lot of scholarship applications open up 3-4 months before people start getting out admissions. And these scholarship applications essentially only look for applicants. So in their first stage, they're not looking for your admission. They're not looking to know whether you've been admitted or not. All they want to know is whether you're seeking for an admission. And what happens is they close their application process very, very early. So, in that process, you lose out on a lot of opportunities. And I'm a single example of this, where I have lost out on the Commonwealth scholarship, the Chevening scholarship, because all the deadlines had finished way earlier than I had got my admit. So essentially, the best way to look about this is, when you finish submitting your LLM application, please do not stop, because that's not where the process stops. That's the time you have to start looking for scholarships. And there are a huge amount of scholarships. Again, you can absolutely avail many of them, because there are a lot of trusts in India which are very kind enough to come forward to help students, and they allow you to avail multiple scholarships. So it's not like if you have got one scholarship, you are not eligible for others. As long as merit plays a huge role, I think you can avail as many scholarships as you can, because you don't want to impose a financial burden, and that it is going to make your life easy when you are going to be going to study. So I think that plays a huge role, and I would definitely suggest to all of you that again, it's a mere suggestion. If you're able to afford the degree, well and good. But I think it always makes a big difference when you have some amount of scholarship to say that you are not going to be imposing such a huge financial burden. And of course, the last bit of what I wanted to say is with respect to recruitment opportunities. Maybe not the right time to discuss this because a lot of us are going through a lot of countries are in fact going through a financial crisis. In fact, when I was in the UK, UK always was having the problem with Brexit, and now of course you have the pandemic going on. So there are going to be problems with recruitment opportunities, but I think there are a lot of recruitment opportunities available because each country out there is great for exposure. But I think it's very important to research well enough. Something that all of us should do is when you are researching for the degree that you want to do, be sure that you also research on what you eventually seek from the degree. So there has to be an end result of why you're doing it. Now there are two schools of thought here. One is people who want to broaden their horizon, people who want to broaden their perspective on the subject, people who are just looking to study more and to gain more knowledge. Now that school of thought is great. It's absolutely amazing because these are people who are looking to study more. But there are also schools of thought where people want to earn more. So you want to get a very high paying job. You want to work in the magic circle law firms, which is again excellent. But when you want to do this, you also have to ensure that you've researched well enough. Now, a simple example, when you look at the UK market scenario, there is an entire different process, by where you can practice law. So you have the concept of solicitors, you have the concept of barristers, and we all know how different the working is. Now, barristers are nothing but people who represent clients in courts or tribunals, and solicitors are nothing but people who work in law firms, essentially. So, the process is not so simple as it seems, where you can just go there and join as a barrister or start working as a solicitor. There are certain courses and exams that you actually have to clear. Now, say for example, for the barristers, you have the bar practice training course, which is an extremely comprehensive course of an year, and then you give an exam, and then you have something called the mini internships, which are called pupilages. And the same thing goes with solicitors as well. Now, all of this might seem a little complicated for most of you because it's just maybe too much of information at once. But essentially, what I'm trying to convey is that your research cannot just be restricted to your master's degree and the university that you want to go to. You have to go one step further to understand what do you want to seek from the degree to realize if the opportunities are good enough, and what are you looking for. Are you looking for, say, working with the United Nations, or are you looking to work with NGOs? Are you looking to work with other organizations or law firms? And I think that's a very important perspective that you need to have, because a lot of times people tend to get disappointed. And you have to understand that all we have is 10 months to 12 months. We don't have 5 years. So we don't have time to think. We really have to be on our feet. So if you want to make this degree count, then you really have to research well enough before you start to embark upon it. And yeah, like I said, these are the most important aspects of any master's degree that you would want to pursue. And I think the application process is extremely complicated, very, very taxing, and very time consuming. So I would definitely say that all of you shouldn't lose confidence at any point of time, because I got 4 rejections before I got Oxford. So it is difficult. It's not easy, right? Because what happens is it's a huge process. You worked on it for months. You may get rejected. Your application process might not go through. But I think it's very important to be strong-willed, to understand that even if you don't get in through one attempt, you can always make another attempt, and that's all right. And again, a simple suggestion is that please don't stop dreaming big. Don't let anyone tell you that you don't deserve a specific university, or no one's going to get it, or any of that sort, because it's only going to pull you down. And you should never let anything pull you down, because I always believe in the concept of dreaming big. And sharing a simple story is that I applied to Harvard Law School. Of course, I got rejected, but when I applied, I had a lot of my friends who laughed at me and told me, that you're just kidding, right? I mean, you're not going to get in there. But then, you shouldn't really be demotivated, because if it is your dream, then there's nothing wrong to pursue it. And I don't feel bad that I got rejected. In fact, I would have regretted had I not applied. So don't let anyone or anything tell you that, you don't deserve a specific university or you're not good enough, because I think you need to be confident in the process. And even if you don't get it and one attempt, please don't belittle yourself or, think that you don't deserve it, because, all that is needed with an application is one good day or one bad day. And we all know that it's not that you're bad or you don't deserve it. And secondly, one other suggestion that I would want to give all of you is that, again, repeating the simple thing of starting early, because it gives you a lot of time to understand what you want and what you don't want. So when you start early, you understand why you want to do it, and sometimes in that process, you may even realize that maybe this is not what you want to do. So it's always very important to start early. And again, if you think at any point of time that it's not something that's important or you can do it last minute, understand that there is a lot of money involved in this. So you have to make wise decisions. And yeah, that's about it. I would love to answer questions if you guys have any questions in this regard. I will take up Samiksha's question first. I think that's one of the most important questions to answer. I think there is a very wrong perception that exists in the law school community that, only if you're a mooter, you're good, or only if you're a debater, you're good, or, only these two things matter. Again, a very simple example that I would want to give is that when I joined, or when I started studying at Oxford, one of my closest friends who happened to be from another law school had not done a single moot. So all she did was write papers, and she had no experience in mooting. She did not like mooting, so she didn't do any moots. But she was there. So you see, there you go, Samisha, a simple example of how and why, if you haven't done moots, it's not the end of the world. And it is not the it is not the most important thing in applications. But at the same time, if you haven't done it, it means you were doing something else, right? So essentially, what I'm trying to say is you have to concentrate on any activity, be it, say, debating, be it mooting, be it paper presentations, conferences, writing, anything, but there has to be involvement in some sort of extracurricular or co-curricular activity, and that's important. So my friend, who happened to be from another law school, had no experience in mooting, didn't do anything, and but at the same time, she wrote a lot. So she wrote about 5 to 6 research papers and had them published in very renowned law journals, and she had good grades. So essentially, that is what helped her, and she was there. So we were two different people in the same university, completely different interests. But like I said, every application is different, and please don't feel that if you don't debate or you don't moot, you will not get in, because you have examples to the contrary clearly. And again, with respect to putting out even your achievements when it comes to mooting or debating, even if you have 10 or 15 or say 20 of them, ensure that you don't put in everything in your SOP. So, it's good to have so many achievements, but they're not trying to know everything through your SOP, because anyway, your CV is going to have all of it. So ensure that your SOP has like a beautifully written story which is weaved in a way that you're convincing, the admissions committee this is the best of you. You may have 15 achievements, but you can only put 2 or 3 of them and ensure that you've convinced them with your point. So I hope that has solved, that's answered your question, Sneha. And I'll be more than happy to answer any other questions that you guys probably have.
Any queries, please, to ask?
I will also be putting down my number and email ID in case you guys want to get in touch with me personally. And yeah, feel free to ask me anything.
Hi Sneha, I had a question for you.
Yeah, please tell me.
I wanted to ask you that is it true that if we want to apply for job opportunities in the US or the UK after doing an LLM, we need to start with the process of applying for them even before we make the LLM application? That is what somebody told us very recently, so I wanted to understand how exactly the process works.
Yeah, I think Devina, that's a good question. So essentially, I wouldn't say that's completely false. So what happens is that because most of the courses, especially in the UK and the US, are barely 1 year. So essentially these courses end in like 9 months or 10 months. So what happens is that especially I can talk about the UK market. You will not get a job right after you finish masters if you don't undergo or if you don't apply for certain mini internships or say mini opportunities, because these are very essential for you to eventually either get a training contract or essentially get a pupillage. Because all of these courses that you do, say essentially your master's degree as well, it does not make a difference for you to practice in UK, because when you're going to be practicing in the UK, you still have to finish those courses. So it doesn't matter. This master's degree is not going to give you any greater weightage when it comes to those courses, because that is a bare minimum requirement. Say it's a simple example. In India, you need to write the bar exam, right? So there as well, if you want to be a solicitor, you have to undergo the GDL. It is a very important process of your training contract. You undergo the GDL, and it's only after that you get a training contract, and you're a trainee. And it's after the process of being a trainee that you actually get a job. So it's a very complicated process, definitely, and a lot of times. In fact, I felt when I went there that maybe should have started looking for opportunities even before you have applied for masters, but that's not possible, right? That is not practically possible. So the best way to the best way to go about this process is that when you start your masters itself, there is a lot of brainstorming that universities normally do. So, we had a lot of brainstorming sessions in the second and third week of our master's degree, which initially we felt was too much to take. But please ensure that you make use of all these opportunities. And in fact, a lot of my friends did apply for internships then, and they did get these internships, and these eventually did, transform or did convert into jobs. So it's not that it's impossible, but I would definitely say it's difficult. It is very, very difficult because of the fact that you have to clear certain preliminary, processes before you become or before you enter into a job. The same thing goes with the US as well. You have the bar exams there as well that you have to give. So essentially those things don't change. But I would say that you need to ensure that when you start doing your masters, you start your process of looking for recruitment opportunities right at that time itself, because if you're not going to be doing it then it becomes too late. But yes, I do agree with you that I wouldn't say right before or you have to do it way more earlier, but I think when you do it in sync with your master's degree, at least in the start, I think it would be really helpful.
All right. Thank you so much.
Any other question, please?
Hi Sneha, this is Veda. Firstly, I wanted to thank you for taking our time to talk to us, and it's been really insightful. So my question was regarding research. So I'm from 3 year course, right? And I don't know about the 5 year course, but at least the 3 year course, we don't have a dedicated research methodology class where they kind of teach us how to go about with research. And with my undergrad degree, also I did not have a dedicated class to learning how to research per se. So if I am taking an LLM which has a considerable amount of research required, for example, out of 180 credits, say 60 credits is for research. Do you think that a 1 year degree is enough to kind of make that thesis, or would you recommend that you go in for a part-time degree? Because there are a very few universities actually giving out part-time degrees to international students. But if it is an option, do you think for somebody who does not have a very great background with research could take more time to do it, considering the situation?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a very good question. But to be very honest, I think at least from what I understood, when I started studying, or when I started my master's degree, I realized that everything that I had learned in terms of how to go about research was not the way that it actually is. So essentially, I feel that when you start your master's degree, everyone starts from a zero. So I would definitely say that you shouldn't think that you are at a disadvantage, or the fact that you may not have enough exposure as opposed to others makes you not good enough to take a 1 year course. I would definitely say that you should not refrain from doing that, because I think the research methodology is very, very different when it comes to writing a thesis or writing a dissertation. And that's my personal opinion. I felt, because I felt like I started from zero. But the best part is that every university, or at least most of the universities abroad, also understand this, that there are people coming from different jurisdictions who may not have had exposure in the same possible way. So at least I can speak for Oxford, because we had multiple research methodology sessions where we had professors coming to us and explaining us what the process is, how we're supposed to write. we had a lot of examples of how dissertations were supposed to look. We had a lot of one-on-one sessions. So what I'm trying to say is there are ample opportunities, there are ample areas where people can help you to understand how research methodology works, and you are at the same level as almost as how almost everyone else is. Because I believe that research methodology, especially when it comes to projects at master's level, is way more complicated and complex as opposed to, say, the research papers that we write at our undergraduate level. And because universities understand this, and also one of the other reasons is that we have people from different jurisdictions where there are a lot of jurisdictions where people don't even have the concept of research methodology, or where people may not even have written research papers. So I think keeping this in mind, they do train students well enough. In fact, we had an excellent training facility where you had like one-on-one discussions with your mentors, you had one-on-one discussions with professors where they would teach you how to do it, they would correct you. So I would say that don't limit your opportunities simply by the fact that you may not have had exposure. But definitely, since you know that that is an area that you probably lack, or that's an area that you need work on, I would say that you can utilize your time from now to probably work on it. But I don't think it puts you at any difficult position. So I don't think you have to worry about it.
All right. Thank you so much.
That's a very difficult question to answer. So essentially, Priyam, okay, you've basically asked colleges send acceptance at different timings. How do you suggest one takes a call? Okay, the way I went about it, again, not the most right way to do so, but I ranked the colleges that I wanted to go in. So I had a list where for me it was a 1, 2, 3, 4. So the thing is also very important. The way you would rank it is, so everyone has a fair idea of when application, acceptances or rejections come. So again, this is one point research that all of you should also do, because then you also have a fair idea of what to expect and what not. So everyone knows that Cambridge and Oxford ideally send their application acceptances in March. Now that's a given thing, and it's always normally second week of March. So when during your research, when you also research on when the acceptances and rejections ideally come, it gives you a better, puts you at a better place in terms of expectations. Now, it also creates some sort of a risk. I definitely agree with that, because I say, for example, a person X gets into a university like NUS Singapore, and the deadline is before the acceptance for that of, say, Oxford. You have to take a call. There's nothing that you can do there, because it is absolutely something that's not in your hands. But again, it's a matter of chance, it's a matter of luck. But again, why I think it's important is because what you could possibly do is not apply to every possible place. So I applied to 4 universities. So if you apply to 4 or 5 universities, you know what to expect, right? And to be very honest, I think that the one thing that you can give it to these universities is that most of them give their acceptances during March. Now, the only acceptances that you get early in Jan are those early bird acceptances. Say, for example, for universities which have those early bird applications, you apply really early and then you get a response, which is also great. But again, I understand that it puts you in a tough spot. Now, something that a lot of my other friends did, which may also seem unethical, was they gave an they agreed to the acceptance, and then they sent in like a apology and all of that. But I would say that that's a very difficult question to answer. That you taking a call is completely dependent on how you rank your colleges. Now, say for example, if I have got my rank 1, then I shouldn't care about the rest of the 3. But of course, when if I've got 2, 3, 4, and then I don't end up getting rank 1, but I've also lost out the deadlines of 2, 3, 4, then you're in an absolute tough spot. But I think you can tend to be a little realistic. Now, it's okay to be idealistic. You want to get into all the colleges, which is great. But maybe towards the end, say by March 15th or March 16th, in the mid, when almost all the colleges give out, you tend to be more realistic in understanding, okay, this is where I may get or I may not get, and you try to take a call. And I really do think that luck plays a huge role here, which is why I completely get where you're coming from in terms of trying to understand why and how it's very difficult to take a call. But again, it's a question that I probably may not have been able to answer in the best possible way. But I like I said, it's a very subjective thing, and you really have to be lucky when it comes to this bit. I hope I at least tried to answer it to some extent.
Next question, please. Is there any?
So yes, sir, I'll just answer Samiksha's
All
question.
right, all right, all right.
Uh, yeah, Samiksha, you have asked me when you say, do we consider IS and okay? So essentially, again, the problem is that a lot of universities abroad don't really look so much into the ISSN and ISBN numbers. At least this is what my knowledge is, because to be very honest, the research papers that I wrote were good reputed journals, but they weren't really the best ones. So I would say that, I mean, definitely do not recommend paid journals. Please do not do that. Like, you don't please do not pay for your research papers, and that's a normal ethical practice as well. I mean, nothing to do with your master's degree application process. But I think that definitely, if you're going to be looking at journals, aim for the best ones. Aim for, you have the Cambridge Law Journal. You have many journals which are great. But do not restrict yourself to, if you're not able to submit to these journals, that should not restrict you from publishing in any other journal. So I would say that you don't have to really think too much about it, because I don't think I had research papers in the best of journals, but I think they were good enough for it to be considered as valid. And I don't think that even admissions committee is going to look into how good the journal is, or is it the best one, or is it in the top 5 or top 10. But like I said, please do not probably publish your papers in. I mean, don't pay for your articles. That's not normally also ethical, but I think you can broaden your horizon in terms of looking for all types of journals and all these. In fact, now you have this concept of blog writing as well, if I'm not wrong, by a lot of universities. Indulge in as many opportunities as you can in any way possible, as long as all of these things make a difference and it has helped you as well.
Anyone else, please? I think they are done. I mean, all the dimensions probably are covered, and actually, it was very nice of you to put it up properly in the particular context. So I would like to thank you on that note, Sneha, for taking up time for us and
Thank you so much.
mentioning all the aspects pertaining to the LLM, pursuing LLM abroad. Most importantly, what you mentioned was very correct. It is one's own call on in terms of making the use of the LLM and the initiating the things at the right time and managing the timelines. So once again, thank you for being with us. It was nice to hear you. Thank you again from Symbiosis Law School, Pune. Thanks one and all for participating in this session.
No problem, sir. Thank you so much, sir, once again. And I would just like to tell one last thing. I'm more than free to help anyone at any point of time. So feel free to get in touch in case you guys have any personal queries as well. Thank you so much, sir, once again.
Yeah. Thank you, Sneha. Thank you so much. We may invite you again for maybe for different batch for 4th years or so. So
Absolutely,
I'm just
whenever.
keeping you informed timely. Thank you so
No
much.
problem. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else who has not given the attendance, please do post it before the call is disconnected. Those who have posted, ignore. Final call, please. If anyone has not posted their PRNs and division, do post it immediately for attendance. Those who have posted, please ignore. This is a final call. Thank you. All right. Presume that everyone have given their attendances. I'll exit the call. Thank you so much for joining.